Weight Free Wellness Podcast, number 11. Well, hello, friends. Here we are again at Weight Free Wellness Podcast. This is your hostess, Tara Bachland. And today we have John Bachland, who you may guess is my hubby. And you'll be hearing him a number of times on this podcast, not just because I really think he's really cool, but he actually has some really good things to say, including today. Our topic is what do guys really want, or what do men really want? And we'll be covering that topic based upon our experience, of course, and John's longtime experience of being a guy. And I think he has good things to say on this. And, it's actually something really particular that's really helped us. So what goes along with that? If you feel that you've missed something important or want to get something out of the show notes that we've talked about, just go to the website, weightfreewellness.com, and you'll see the information there posted with this podcast. Also, note that in September and October, we will have some great podcast launch bonuses, so you'll want to check that out. And it's going to be different each week, so go ahead and see what's going on there. So the show notes, promos, cool stuff. And also, if you're really enjoying this podcast, I know in these first several episodes, I'm sure you're just head over heels about it. Some ways that you can support the podcast are just shopping through the Weight Free Wellness store. There's also an Amazon link, and all you have to do is click that little banner ad on the front page, and it'll automatically take you to the Amazon.com website and already have you linked through our link. And I don't see necessarily what you purchase. You don't pay any more. We just get a small percentage, and that's a super easy way to support the podcast. Of course, if you tell a friend, huge thanks for doing that. And as I mentioned on a few intros, this is the beginning of the Weight for Wellness podcast. So if there's a few glitches, that kind of thing, please just give us a little bit of break. It's kind of like I've equated it to starting to ride a bike. You can have someone tell you what to do. You can see how others do it, but you have to really be doing it yourself and fall a few times, scrape your knees, that kind of thing. And so we're doing our best here. Hang with us. We'll get this thing going straight down the road here soon. So my guest, as I mentioned, John Bachland, my cool hubby. I hope you think he's cool too. But he
putting a lot of pressure on people.
Well, today's topic, and I actually did give you the benefit of knowing about the topic this time before we're talking about it, which is what do guys really want? And this topic actually came up over a year ago, I believe, when we were kind of having a little glitch in our relationship. We've been together.
Are you kidding me?
It happens. We've been together for 16 years now. We've been married since the year 2000. And so we've been through a few things. And I don't remember particularly what was happening. Maybe you do, since I did give you a little bit of a clue this time of what's going on.
I don't know if I want to say.
Maybe I don't want you to say that.
Is this the tell-all podcast?
Oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that in the beginning. But so I don't remember what was happening, but you had the insight about yourself to say, you know what, this is what I really need from you. And you also explained, I don't know if it was at that time or later, but guys are pretty simple, I think was the way that you put it. Not simple-minded, I don't think you were implying, but pretty simple. And you said that all that I want from you really is, of course, love, but it comes across as respect and admiration. And I know you've told me those things before, but for some reason at that time, I really took it to heart. And I wrote it down, and I made a Post-it note and put it on my mirror where I do my makeup on a regular basis. And so that I would consciously and subconsciously remember respect and admiration. Instead of me just rambling on here about the intro, what comes to your mind, first of all, recalling that episode?
Well, it's interesting that you said, what do guys want? Because that's the way I take it, and the way I was thinking about it is what do I as a man need from my significant other, from my partner? And obviously you have to be respectable to get respect, but to be respected and to be appreciated in the sense of being a provider, and if you could have belief in what I'm doing. I know it's easy to pick. It's easy to, like, I'm looking at you right now going, you need to fix the feather on the right side. Yeah, there you go, because it's kind of falling. Yeah. So, and now you're perfect. So, that it was just one little adjustment, and that's all it took. But I think when I was thinking about it, I might have been picking a little bit at how you were talking to me or saying things to me, or seeing the way I was doing things. But I wanted you to believe that I was going to take care of everything. And the more responsibility, I think, that you put on a man, somebody who is a real man, if you step back and appreciate and believe in what your man is doing, that's all he needs. And then he will feel the weight and the responsibility of getting things done, taking care of things, making things work, and being successful. And that's what I was saying to you.
Well, that's a good summary, and I'm taking notes here. Just in case I missed something last time when you originally said it. And I felt after I implemented that it actually worked. I felt that you didn't see my screen switch over, or I didn't go offline, did I?
No, you're still here.
Okay, good. I just closed some windows, so still getting the hang of driving this
technical aspects. Here. One of the things that's interesting that we're doing here, most people would think we'd just be sitting in the same room with a couple of microphones, but this is so easy using Google Hangouts, which is going to switch over to YouTube Live in about a week here. And you're actually upstairs. I'm in the office. And we've got a full-blown studio, a video studio. And if anybody's doing podcasts, I'm just being technical guy here because I'm Tara's technical support on her podcast. This is a really great way for free to record a podcast. You do need 2 computers or 2 iPads or 2 iPhones. You need 2 devices to be able to do this with, but it's recording everything, and then it switches back and forth between the video automatically. So
this would be a good way if someone just to check out, if they're just listening to the podcast, check it out on YouTube, check it out on the website, and see actually what's going on. It's actually kind of neat. I've gotten into watching more podcasts rather than just listening to them in the car too. It's kind of neat to see what's going on in people's worlds.
Right. And this is, so many people spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get their technical side of their podcast up and going, and this is free. So congratulations, Tara.
Thank you. I'm going to segue and say I really appreciate your help in all this. It's pretty awesome.
But I have my own. I'm going to mute myself and see if you can hear me cough, because I have to cough.
No, I can't hear you.
Oh, that was awesome. So I just muted it on the screen there.
Cool. So I'm going to segue and say I really appreciate that you are my technical support, and I can do all this cool stuff with your aid and your help. I just going back to our topic, the respect and appreciation, I really made note, like I said, after we had had that talk, I physically made the note, the Post-it note, and put it on my mirror. But I also made a mental note of when I started really applying what you had said. And I think it really, really made a difference. The main thing that I noticed, and we haven't talked about this, I kind of made my own mental note about this, is that the main thing that stood out is that we had less tension between us more often, had less tension more often, or less tension overall. And what I sensed is that you were getting your love tank filled, because that's what you said emphatically of what you needed. And so I trusted what you were saying and applied it. And what I'd like to hear from you next is, well, first of all, maybe you can answer simply. Is this something, the respect and admiration, is this really something that all guys want? I mean, if someone is listening to this and they're assuming that they're in a relationship with a man, is this something they can assume that their man is going to want also?
Yeah. In listening to guys talk, there's a lot of men out there that aren't getting. I don't want to out any of my friends. A lot of guys that aren't getting much with regards to relationship. You mentioned filling your love tank, and both of us read The 5 Love Languages, which is a really good book several years ago, maybe 10, 12, 13 years ago, maybe even more. And that really was something that educated both of us. And then we also watch John Gray videos and Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus information. And that's some really good stuff too. I was just I'm going to change this back to having light in the room. I wanted to see what it looked like with the light off. So it was dark.
So I won't make you call out any of your friends through answering that question. But what kind of leading into the next question is, I'm assuming that this is subjective. Like each person, each guy, this is going to be different. What are some examples? Maybe they're your examples or things that you've heard from men. So this will be a good way of not tattling on them, but grouping them in. How can a woman show her respect and admiration?
Oh boy. So, just realizing, what you do for each other as a couple. I think, I don't want to throw it all on women, but I think that if couples can observe what the other does that benefits the relationship, acknowledging that, thanking the person for that, or adding on to it, saying, I appreciate that you do this, and I really, because you do that, I do this, and I didn't, it's not a tit for tat, or it's not an equanimity kind of thing, but it makes me feel more comfortable doing this thing that I do for you because I see what you're doing for me. And having that mutual appreciation and admiration is incredibly important. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's one answer.
In some systems, they do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are many ways. That's a general answer. So that's really good in that way. So, maybe like if the woman, maybe the guy does the dishes for the night, and I could say to you, I really appreciate you doing the dishes tonight. That really sets me at ease to be able to relax sooner. And then I feel like I can sit on the couch and hang out with you and rub your feet, and I'm assuming that makes you go, hey, that sounds good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's going to be different for each couple, or maybe, honey, you took my car and gassed it up and washed it. That's, it just makes me feel appreciated.
And topped off the oil and the tires and made sure it was driving good.
Yeah. Or appreciate it, cared about, you're looking after my well-being, making sure that is functioning well. So I think there are many ways to do it. And then of course the kryptonite to that would be doing the opposite, and which is a part of my own journey and really trying to be, not sabotage myself by doing that.
You brought up kryptonite, and a couple things popped into my mind. What stops people in relationships, and I think, when we went through this early on, where you would ask me if I could do something, I would say yes, and then maybe 2 hours later it wasn't done, and we would have a conversation would ensue, and you would say, I asked you to do this, and I said I know, And you'd say, but you didn't do it. And I'd say, I didn't do it yet.
Mm-hmm.
That there's the entire day, there's the entire week, there's the entire month. Is this a task that needs to be done this moment? And what is the timeline that you're thinking of? Because the timeline I was thinking of was always a little bit longer. If you said, could you take out the garbage? I would look at the garbage and I would say, well, it's not full. So I'll wait, till after we're done cleaning the kitchen or after we're done doing something, and then I'll check it again. And well, it's not full. So I'll leave it. You may have had a reason you wanted it out. Maybe you were going to be cleaning a bunch of vegetables and you knew there was going to be a lot of waste, or maybe the garbage smelled odd to you and you wanted it out and I couldn't smell it. And so there's what a man needs from his woman and what a man needs to give to his woman in my world. And so those little things which make your life smooth, make you appreciate each other, and make things so much better can seem so small and so insignificant, but they're very huge.
Well, what I learned and really tried to do is, instead of asking you when I think of it, I try to think ahead of time and give you actually a time frame, not in a to-do list kind of way, like I need to have this done within 2 hours.
Right.
That sounds really bossy, of course.
Well, I remember so many times you would make a list and you're like, there's so many things on this list that needs to be done. And I look at it and I'm like, well, that's a half hour. And you would watch me cruise around the house and do all these things, and they were done so quickly. And I know in your mind it was like, well, why didn't you do them right away? Because then they'd be done. And I'm like, well, it only took half hour. It doesn't really matter when I do it.
Yeah, or I'll say specifically, instead of get this done in 2 hours, I give you an insight to my expectation or my hope. And like tomorrow, for example, we have a water delivery coming, and so I'll tell you tonight that by tomorrow morning the water jugs need to be out. Yep. And so it's not do it now, do it later, then I'm checking up on you. It's just, hey, a heads up.
Right. Well, we've gotten to that point.
Yeah, it's been a process. And I assume, not every couple is going to be that way too. I know a couple that the wife makes a list for her husband, and I know that as you've heard about that, and that just irked you. But that's how they operate. It works for them because he processes information that way. I'm a list maker too. And so it's easier to have that. Oh no, it's the opposite. She would make a list, but it wouldn't compute with him, but she'll ask him one thing at a time.
Right.
And it works for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of going back a little bit, we're thinking of examples of respect and admiration. How else can that show up?
For me, touching is a big thing. And when we speak of love tank and that kind of stuff, I'm a physical touch kind of person. So, a lot of touch, even when you're passing by me, if you just reach out and grab my hand or, give me a punch on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy, that's something that it sounds funny. But
I'm not being violent, by the way.
No, I wouldn't care if you hit me as hard as you could. We just, we get along that way where you just kind of give me a little bump on the shoulder and say, hey, buddy. And I say it back to you, and it's kind of our little thing. So.
Well, you brought up something that actually
physical touch is one thing. So.
Well, that's a great segue. You had already mentioned the 5 love languages, but I would highly recommend that to anyone who's feeling kind of like they're not connecting well with their spouse or their partner. And knowing your own love language is imperative also. I'll just bring up myself, for example, even though this is what do men really want. Maybe this will give some insight for men, for their women. And I'll put these books and such in our show notes, by the way, of course. So one of my love languages is gifts. And I'm not necessarily a materialistic person where I'm not about collecting everything, although you see the scarves behind me and stuff. That's only a handful. As I say that, not really about collecting things while you see several scarves of mine. But anyways, it's really about the meaning and the thought. Um, so like I've said to you specifically before, I like gifts, but for example, I'm not a flowers gal. Like flowers to me are kind of a waste. Every once in a while, I'll buy some for myself because I just seasonality kind of thing. It's neat. But if you buy me a gift certificate that's for the nursery, then I can go and choose what I want. Then
Exactly.
that works. Or my favorite store. And so I'm kind of particular in that way. So I have told you that so that you can also win by that scenario. So instead of you guessing at what my love language is or what more specifically I like in that love language, then it helps out the relationship also.
Yeah, making your partner guess is a really bad policy. It's a terrible strategy to getting into somebody's heart and into their mind and making them appreciate you.
Right.
It'd be better to know that you like gift certificates to the nursery, and then you can surprise me with what you bring home.
Well, what's interesting is we also tend to give the love language that we like to receive.
Right.
So, for example,
so I touch you constantly.
Right. And I'm
but
like,
that's also a good indicator to people.
It's a very good indicator.
If you can't figure out your partner's love language, it's because you're not paying attention to what they're doing
and
to and for you.
They'll tend to want to give it, or they'll be complaining about it. So like,
Right.
you don't spend enough time with me, or why don't you talk? So those are other love languages, which
is also a terrible strategy to try and get people to talk to you. Tell them that they're never talking to you, because you're reinforcing that negative phrase.
It is, which is why we're trying to provide the pointers before hopefully some of this happens. And in my opinion, sometimes you have to bite the bullet yourself. So maybe you've been in that relationship for a while and you're like, why do I have to be the one to change my habits? Why can't he or she? Because clearly she's nagging and clearly he's distant or whatever. But sometimes you do have to, like when you told me this information, the respect and admiration, I could have very well been feeling at that time, well, you're not giving me enough attention, so why am I going to give you the respect and admiration? But we're obviously both very highly invested in our relationship. So I will and do maybe give a little bit more in order to get us back on track if that were the case.
Right. Yeah. Well, you should talk a little bit about your background, and without naming names and saying who, but you came from a background where the female was not very appreciative of the male, and you learned a lot of that type of behavior that came into our relationship.
The matter of the fact is that we're going to act in our relationship how we learned from the significant figures in our lives. Right. So we reenact what was modeled for us. And the respect and admiration part was not necessarily modeled from what I remember, and clearly by my early actions in our relationship. Not to say that you were perfect either, but you're pretty awesome. You had learned
10% off perfect. I know.
What was it?
I was 10% off.
10% off?
Off perfect.
Off perfect? I don't remember getting that discount.
Yeah, or 10 degrees off.
So I say that because we all learn, but you had come from previous relationships. You had come from parents who really had modeled the respect and admiration quality. And so clearly for you, you noticed when it was missing. You came from a family where you were touched and adored all the time. And I jokingly jokingly criticize your mom. Thanks a lot. All of your loving attention makes your son just want it even more. And
I actually have separation anxiety from you right now, and you're just upstairs.
Here, I'll send touchy vibes.
Oh, stop. We're on video. This isn't one of those kind of videos.
No, it isn't. And yeah, so you model, you reenact what you've learned. And that's an important thing to consider also. But you can relearn, you can recreate. And that's the thing, is when you're in a relationship with someone, you can decide to make your relationship different. It doesn't have to be the same. I was just doing like rapper, like hand movements.
You're kind of, you look like you're a little bit from Jersey.
Do I?
Yeah.
I don't know if they would agree.
So I had put down what a man needs to give his woman. And I think one thing I will say, and I talk to lots of guys, and I give
Well,
out
that's why I had you on about this topic. You know, you are a guy, you talk to lots of guys.
I talk to a lot of guys about relationships, and we've talked to lots of couples over the years about relationships, and you do have to be cautious. You know, so let's say you read a book and you read the 5 love languages, and you have got your partner figured out, you got yourself figured out, but your partner hasn't partaken in reading the book, and they're not invested in figuring you out. They're caught in their modality of whatever they learned, the strategies they grew up with, the things that got them their way, or got them things that they wanted. And that can be a very bad situation to share your makeup. You know, this is what makes me tick. This is because that can be used against you in the worst way, and it can be exploited. So you have to be in a caring, loving relationship where both sides want to get to the next level in the relationship, want to figure things out, and want to grow as a couple. That, I think, is the most important thing. You know, I've sat down with many guys over the years that were in tears, and I've said, you know, harsh things like, she doesn't want to be with you and you don't want to be with her. And it's amazing how many people, even though they realize that they don't want to be with their significant other, and that other person doesn't want to be with them, you know, because actions speak louder than words, the way that people treat each other. 5-10 years later, they're still together and they're still torturing each other. And, you know, that goes into other things that I believe are going on, but, you know, things that people need to get over and lessons they need to learn. That might be for another podcast, but you've got to be careful. You know, you can't just take your newfound knowledge or listen to this podcast and go running back to your significant other and say, hey, I figured a bunch of things out and here's how I want you to treat me. And, you know, because they're not, you just went from level 1 to level 3 in understanding, and they're still at level 1 or less. And you got to be careful. So
I think that's a really good point. And, you know, I've been pretty fortunate in a lot of relationships in my life to have good relationships. I also do understand from a handful of relationships when you have to be careful, in that the person may not be as interested in a quality relationship or the type of quality relationship that you want to have. And for whatever reason, you're no longer, or maybe even never were, on the same page. That's kind of what I was implying earlier when I said sometimes you need to put in a little bit more,
right,
to see even if they're willing to cooperate. Because you'd be amazed sometimes when someone else is getting their love tank filled, they're getting respect and admiration or just recognition of how they could just do a complete 180 because they didn't know that that was a need that they had. Now, that's not always the case, but I have had it happen a number of times where it could even just be a casual situation or a business situation where someone is getting upset, you know, but then you say, you know, I hear that you're upset, you know, let's talk this out. And just them knowing that someone's willing to listen and spend that quality time. It may not be a relationship where you need quality time, but they're clearly a communicator that needs that kind of interaction.
And there has to be adjustment time. You know, it feels really good. Let's say you and I went to the health club tonight and we worked out really hard. It'd feel really good because we just went out for a walk, and you know, our muscles are warmed up and limber and that type of stuff. And we work out really hard. Tomorrow we're going to be very sore. And that's kind of
Right.
my analogy for adjustment period. So what I was saying is there's adjustment period. You can't go from 0 to 60 as fast as possible. And then there may be some, when I would bring things up to you, generally I'd bring them up one thing at a time. And I would say, this is what I need from you. I love you. I want to be with you. This is what I need from you. And do you understand that? Can you do it? And always you said yes. You were a very willing participant in learning about me as I was about you and developing our relationship.
I think one of the main things was that I'm really careful. I'm still trying to process how I'm going to address things that could be perceived as negative. I don't want to make my family or my upbringing seem like a totally negative thing. We all learn from situations in life. And so forgive me as I'm stumbling upon how to even share these kinds of things, but I want to share.
That's okay.
Because
I kind of shocked you with it. I kind of jumped in and said, hey, you should share this.
Well, I think they're very helpful things that will be helpful to other people.
Right.
Because I certainly didn't know about this until, first of all, you brought it to my attention, and then started looking and reading and researching myself. So anyways, looking at the examples that you had growing up, and how were the relationships that you had as models? And do you want your relationship to be like that? If your answer is for the most part no, then you're going to have to either be willing to settle for the types of relationships that you had modeled around you, or actually learn how to have a better relationship and identify what better means to you. So I don't want to get too far off topic in the sense that, what do men really want? My advantage was that you were very clear on what you wanted, having had experience with a number of previous relationships, and also having that contrast with how great a relationship your parents modeled for you.
I knew what I needed too. I mean, I want to kind of refocus it back on what does a man need instead of what a man wants.
Okay.
Because I knew what I needed from you.
Well, that actually segues into my next question. And
okay,
I'm curious of your insight. At that time, it actually even kind of surprised me when you said, I need your respect and admiration. And you could specifically identify those things at that time. So what is it, do you think, that helped you to be able to identify those things?
And you might have heard admiration, but, respect and belief, believing in me and what I was doing means, and it meant at the time, and it still means to me, not questioning everything all the time. Because with us, there was a lot of questions from you, and what you've acknowledged over the years was that there was a lot of fear, and a lot of fear of financial things, finances not being there. Or, I suppose we should tell everybody that, I've been an entrepreneur for a really long time. And as an entrepreneur, you seem like a crazy person to the rest of the world. You seem like you're taking, infinite amounts of risk with everything that you have. And although that is quite true,
Mm-hmm.
I see college courses on entrepreneurialism, and I kind of chuckle, because I think to myself, if you're not an entrepreneur by the time you're in college, you're not going to be an entrepreneur.
Well, it's more of a personality type than an occupation.
Right. I mean, you could be an entrepreneur at 40. You could start whatever business you want. But it does seem to start very early. It does seem to kind of run in a person's character. And
by contrast, I did not come from an entrepreneurial family. And so when I got together with you and we started in business together, you were already in business by yourself for a long time. To me, it was akin to riding bareback, horseback behind you, just holding on to you through a rainstorm, jumping over stones and rivers, and
not only is the horse naked, we're both naked too.
Yeah, something like that.
Not trying to hang on to It's raining, my body's wet, you're trying to hang on, and we're at a full gallop jumping over everything.
Interesting visuals, huh?
Right.
So yeah, it was something like that, especially coming from the other side of the fence, so to
Well, you
speak.
came from a family where every weekend was at the lake, every weekend was free, every holiday was a holiday, it was a vacation. All the vacations actually were taken as vacations. And I came from a background where if you had work, because my father was an entrepreneur, also, if you had work, you worked. And when you had money, generally that meant you were working a lot and you didn't have time to take vacations. And when you weren't working a lot, you didn't have much money, so you didn't have enough money to take vacations and you were looking for more work. So it kind of, I got very comfortable with that existence and that behavior. And I'm no longer comfortable with those things that I just described are kind of the negative side of entrepreneurialism. And you coming from where you came from actually helped me see that and understand that. And I appreciate that, because some of what was limiting on your side helped me understand that it's okay to, have some downtime. It's okay to take a vacation. It's okay to plan things into the future, and not just fly by the seat of your pants and take whatever business you can get. So
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank
Awesome.
you. So what I needed from you was your support and belief. And I also needed a lot of things from you that I didn't realize I needed until a couple years after dealing with them with you. Then I realized that they gave me perspective.
What gave you perspective?
Quite a few of the negative things that we dealt with in our relationship from your side. There's obviously negative things from my side too, but the things that came from your side that were negative, I didn't understand in the beginning, but I learned from them.
So it sounds like instead of you saying, well, that's her and she's just messed up because that's her background, you actually did at a certain point go, well, maybe there's something here that I need to look into.
That's funny you say that, because I never thought you were messed up, because I look at things from an NLP standpoint where you just had strategies that you learned. You had strategies. Everything a person does is to get to their goal. So in NLP, one of the axioms is that everybody makes the best decision they can with the information that they have. And most people don't learn after they leave high school. They only learn a job they go to, and they don't expand their personality, their personal awareness, or their selves in many ways. And so I say negative, but it's a way to identify the strategies that you were working from to try and get what you wanted. And you just wanted time with me, and I wanted to work the weekend and provide for you. Mm-hmm. And so we both had each other's interests, but we weren't communicating them efficiently or effectively in the beginning.
So what I'm summarizing, what I'm getting from that is, it is challenging to know our needs. And you can know some of you, obviously there are obvious needs, right? But there are needs that we have that we don't know about until a certain point. And what I hear you saying is that you became aware of these particular needs of needing respect and admiration / belief because there was conflicts that we had, and you became introspective and thought about, okay, what are the strategies that I or Tara is using that are not getting us to where we want or need to be. Right. And so
we brought strategies from our families growing up and our past relationships, but we hadn't developed strategies with each other.
So just to maybe synopsize for those who are listening, you may not know right away, oh, this is actually what I need. But obviously when we're having conflict, there's a sign that there's something to learn from, there's something to grow or change. And of course, there's great materials. We mentioned a few of them. I'll have them in the show notes. And It's so funny because we'll be watching a John Gray seminar and I'll laugh and you'll laugh because he hits the nail on the head about how men and women are and what we want and what we need. And it seems, it's like, I'll look at you like, really? Are guys really that way? That's what they want? And you can hear it in the audience too. It's just hilarious. So I would like to, you can say a little bit more after this if you'd like. I'm giving you permission.
Thank you.
You like that? But what was interesting
is,
can you
type that up in an email so I have it written?
I won't sign it though. So I've been reading, I like to read stuff like this more before bed, the kind of interesting things to ponder. But some of you may have heard of Masaru Emoto's Love Thyself, or his work in general, where they would freeze water from different sources, whether they be polluted rivers or lakes or different kinds of places, and they would take a picture of the frozen crystals, the water crystals, and then they would put it in a container and put the word love or prayer or something, what we would say is positive on it, or thanks, appreciation. And it didn't matter what the language they used on the bottle, the images, the crystals appeared similar, if not almost the same. And the water cleared up, the crystals formed more beautifully and symmetrically. It's really amazing. So without going too far into detail, here's a really neat picture too. I believe this Love Thyself is his last book before he passed away fairly recently, and just has a beautiful message in it too. Kind of a beautiful closing message if you think about it. And what I found especially interesting, and when I was coming up with this topic and questions, what I realized when I saw my notes, respect and admiration, I read recently in his book, he has kind of an invocation or even almost a prayer to the self that he encourages that you say to the water. And because we are mostly water, that you say to yourself on a daily basis. And it is simply, I love you, I thank you, and I respect you. Whether you're saying that to the water, you're saying that to yourself in the mirror in the morning. And he even says it can be really difficult to say that, but the results have proven just through the photography that the crystals and then your cells change and become more harmonious. And I found that so interesting that you had very clearly said several months before that, I just want you to basically say, I love you, I respect you, I thank you. There you can draw strong correlations between the two, so you're kind of making the same point.
Yeah, and since you held up a book, I'm going to hold up a book. This is Beliefs by Robert Dilts, Tim Halblum, and Susie Smith. It's an NLP book, and we were talking a little bit about NLP. So it's Beliefs. This is the second edition. I have a first edition of that I got, way back in 1997 or something like that. But it's all, NLP is all about strategies, and it's all about seeing the map as not the territory, but seeing the map as a map to guide you where to go. And the strategies we were talking about, once you get your needs filled, then you can move on to wants. And I'm kind of particular about those two words, want and need. And it's essential. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchical needs, right? You need food, shelter, and then you can start thinking about other things like spirituality and that type of stuff.
And then what we've recently come up with, this is a good conclusion. You can just sing to each other.
We're concluding now?
Yeah, we're wrapping up.
Are we going to sing? We're going to say, I want
you to want me. Is that?
I need you to want me.
I have no idea what the words are.
I just put them in, you and love you.
I just put them in the order that I want them to be.
We need some auto tune on this thing.
Welcome to our inside jokes, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this podcast.
Yeah, we sing that song and we just throw whatever we want into it.
Yeah, whatever words we want. We won't sing all the versions for you. Just, how'd you like my Minnesota accent there for you?
For you. Oh, yeah.
We got to do our Minnesota accent podcast still. So how about we conclude this and have some dinner?
All right.
I'll meet you downstairs.
I'll meet you in the kitchen.
All right. Love you, baby.
Love you too.
Thanks for listening. You can connect and subscribe to this podcast at weightfreewellness.com. Find us on your favorite social media platforms and stay connected. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.